Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode we're doing It Came From The Network. The topic of this It Came From The Network, NXT from June 20th, 2012, marked on Peacock as Season 6, Episode 1. And the reason I picked this was the first episode of NXT when it switched over from NXT Redemption, which was kind of a continuation of the game show format of NXT to it being a proper developmental show. This was pre-WWE Network. This was, I believe it even was before they had NXT on Hulu. I believe this was when they were still just putting these out on WWE.com. Very interesting to go back. We're 10 years into the future now, a little bit over 10 years into the future, and see what they had there, who they thought was going to be the future, what guys panned out, what guys didn't pan out, who's changed the most. Kind of interesting. That's the reason why I wanted to go back and visit this. With all that said, if you haven't seen my shows before, we rate everything on a 1 to 5 scale. 1 is the worst, 5 is the best. And I consider everything in one segment all in part of the rating. So if there's 2 promos and a match that in one segment, that's all one rating. Now I will say if a match carries over past what would be a quote-unquote commercial break and would be considered 2 segments, that is still part of the ongoing thing. With all that being said, let's jump into this. The first thing we get is Jim Ross coming out and introducing Dusty Rhodes as the GM of NXT. Kind of cool seeing Dusty here. I met Dusty not too long after this, and he was amazing. One of the nicest people I ever met in and out of wrestling. Actually, I met him before this. I met him about a year or 2 before this. He was one of the nicest people I've ever met in wrestling, and it was really great to see that because Dusty's in my top 5 of all time as far as fandom-wise. This was awesome. Dusty basically tells the wrestlers that he's not going to take any crap from them. Pretty cool way to open it. Pretty cool way to open the new beginning of NXT. That was another thing. We're about a year out from NXT 2.0 and the rebrand. So I kind of wanted to go back to this rebrand as well. Coming off of that, we get into a video package highlighting Bo Dallas, which is kind of cool to see. There was a lot of... I remember at the time in FCW and in early NXT, Bo Dallas was looked at as one of the guys that was going to be a can't-miss talent, one of the big stars of the next decade. He had his run, and he had some success. I think his most successful time was as the Bo Dallas in NXT when he kind of turned heel. Also, I liked his B-Team run with someone we're going to mention later, Curtis Axel, who's also on the show in a different name. But I thought it was a pretty cool package. Really, if I was watching this at the time, which I'm pretty sure I did, I would have got really hyped to see the match. We go into a match with Bo Dallas versus Rick Victor, who would later become just Victor as part of the Ascension. Pretty cool match here. Nice, good work, good way. Obviously, Bo is the star that they're going to go with. Victor is more there just to help him get over. Bo Dallas does pick up the win here. Afterwards, Briley Pierce comes out on stage to interview him, which if you're not familiar with Briley Pierce, he's Ryan Nemeth, now on AEW. Nick Nemeth, a.k.a. Dolph Ziggler's younger brother. All in all, pretty good package and segment. I'm going to give it a 3. I thought it was good. Could have been a little better, but still good. Neat to see guys like Victor and Briley Pierce in gimmicks that before they really got popular. Coming from that, we go into one of our, I would say, a definite hits on the show. We get a video package for Seth Rollins, who, unless you've been living under a rock, Seth Rollins has been one of the biggest stars in the WWE in the last decade. So he's an absolute win. I remember his early NXT days, and definitely I've been watching Seth before NXT when he was in Ring of Honor and when he was in Wrestling Society X even. So this was a good package. This was one of the guys that, like I said, it was a definite hit on the show that went on to massive success. And even if he was the only one coming off of this, I would consider this a successful show because with it being a developmental, you're lucky if you get one big hit or maybe two. So it was pretty cool to see him there. Now we go into a package for a debuting next week, Antonio Cesaro, who I know was in FCW at the time, and I really think he was somewhere else because they showed a package of him. It looked like it was on SmackDown. He might have been on some other thing with Oksana, and I remember that. I thought that was on either SmackDown or Raw. I might be wrong. It could have been in an earlier season. It may have even been an earlier season of NXT when it was on the game show version or even the Redemption version, because there was an angle with Oksana and Goldust that led to Antonio Cesaro, who now, as of current time, is wrestling as Claudio Castagnoli. Pretty cool package for him. Another big win. Cesaro is now a Ring of Honor World Champion at the time of this recording. So, we see back-to-back two guys that I would say have had great success coming out of here. Then we go into what's called to be a match between Damian Sandow and Jason Jordan. Sandow comes down, basically says that Jason Jordan is beneath him and he's not going to wrestle this match, and he walks away. So we get a no contest basically. I'm going to give that whole thing, those segments and the non-match, I'm going to give it a 4. All of that was highly entertaining. Cool to see Sandow there. Sandow's one of the guys I think has been, not for no fault of his own, but he was a big miss in WWE. I think there was so much more they could have done with him. The stuff he did with the Miz, the stuff he did as just being Damian Sandow, the Rhodes Scholars. There was a lot of stuff I really enjoyed with Sandow. I just don't know that they ever gave the proper story or proper backing behind him. I thought he could have been much bigger than he was. Jason Jordan as well, and at this point, I definitely remember this, because Jason Jordan was kind of bouncing around on the low end of the card. He was a guy that was used to put over the new talents coming in more often than not. This is pre-American Alpha. I think Jason Jordan also, his is for injury reasons. He could have been something much bigger than he eventually was. He had a decent career. If I was a pro wrestler, I would have loved to have the career Jason Jordan had. He had pretty good success and got to be put in an angle where he was Kurt Angle's son. No, doubling the angle there, I know. But yeah, another two guys that kind of were misses, I would say, and two guys that were major hits. Then coming off of that, we get a video, a really cool Sin City, if you've ever seen the movie Sin City or read the comic books. Looked like a very Sin City stylized video package for the Ascension, which at this point was Conor O'Brien and Kenneth Cameron. Kenneth Cameron would go on to be Bram and then later Tom Latimer, which he is now in NWA, and he's doing great things as that. Kind of cool seeing this pairing, because this was a pairing I really liked the Ascension in this era. I liked them later, even when Cameron gets fired or leaves, and then Rick Victor replaces him. I believe they were even, at one point, they were all three in the group. I might be wrong. I might be getting my timeline way off here. Going from that video, kind of like the Bo Dallas video earlier, we go right into a match with the Ascension going up against CJ Parker, who is now Hard Rock Juice Robinson, and Mike Dalton, who, if you may or may not know, became Tyler Breeze a little bit later. This is another good match. Basically, if you've seen any of the Ascension matches, they're all pretty much the same. They were very much Road Warrior clones in the fact that they would come out and just destroy their opponents and bulldoze through them. And I think it would have been really successful. I had really high hopes for them. I liked that idea that here was a throwback team that just bullied everybody and ran them down. However, when they went to the main roster, they ramped up the Road Warrior clone part of it without ramping up them as their own thing. This was pretty good. Between their video and the match, I'm going to give that a 3. Now next up, and again, CJ Parker, I consider him a major hit, even though it's in New Japan. He's been a pretty big star, a lower, I would say a high mid-card, lower top-tier guy. He's a multiple-time tag champion, multiple-time U.S. champion there. So he's gone on to have great success. Mike Dalton as Tyler Breeze. Kind of a miss. The Ascension's definitely a miss. Tom Latimer, I enjoy his career, so I consider him a small win. Tyler Breeze, though, is another guy I thought could do so much more in his NXT run, especially once he got into that Tyler Breeze gimmick. I thought he could possibly be the next Shawn Michaels. And that's not hyperbole. I thought he was that good. If you watched that stuff back in the time, you would have seen, hopefully you would have seen the same thing that I seen, which I really enjoyed him. I loved Tyler Breeze in NXT, and I still do. He's a character I really like. I even liked his tag team with Fandango as the Fashion Police. I almost called him the Fandango Police. As the Fashion Police, I think he's entertaining no matter what he does. Even on his Twitch streams, he's highly entertaining, and I love him when he's on Up Up Down Down. The guy just has charisma. So, I kind of consider Tyler Breeze kind of a miss. Again, it's subjective. Now, coming from that, we get another major hit. We get a video package for Bray Wyatt, which Bray would go on to be one of their biggest stars of this last decade as well, much like Seth Rollins, I said earlier. So we're seeing the early version of Bray Wyatt and the Wyatt family. This was my favorite era of them, and I know as they evolved and things changed, it was still very good. But I very much loved the Cape Fear-inspired promos. I loved how they did this. To me, I thought Bray Wyatt was going to be like this generation's Kevin Sullivan or this generation's Raven. But he took that and actually, and this is no knock to Kevin Sullivan or Raven, if you've seen videos where I've talked about them, both guys are wrestlers I absolutely love. Bray was able to take it and go even further than either one of them had. And it's kudos to him. Right now, he's a free agent. I don't know if he's ever going to come back to wrestling. If he never does, I would consider, honestly, Bray Wyatt had a Hall of Fame career with just what he did in this character. And I think it's as much as he did, I still think there was a lot left on the table. There was so much more he could have done. And that's crazy to think about with just how good and how highly he was portrayed, that he didn't, in my opinion, he didn't even hit his ceiling. Which, hopefully he will if he ever does decide to come back to wrestling. Hopefully we'll get to see Bray Wyatt in its full form. I thought he was going to be the next, like I said, Raven or Kevin Sullivan. He went even further than that, where he got up into where he could have potentially been the next Undertaker. Again, no knock on Kevin Sullivan or Raven, but I can guarantee you if you ask either one of them if they think they had as good of a career as the Undertaker, I don't think either one of them would say they did. Now, coming from that video, we get a segment backstage where Derek Bateman's looking for Johnny Curtis in his office, which is a men's room. And if you're not familiar with either of those names, Johnny Curtis would later go on to be Fandango. Derek Bateman would later go on to be EC3. Two guys who had a monicum of success. Again, they had some relative success here. We already talked about Fandango and Breeze's team. EC3, most of his success, or the biggest success he had, was both when he came back to NXT as EC3 and his run in TNA in Impact Wrestling as EC3 and Dixie Carter's nephew. I love these guys, and this was kind of cool to see both of them here. Again, much like I said with Victor, much like Mike Dalton being Tyler Breeze, Briley Pierce. Cool to see characters or wrestlers and gimmicks that they're not more known for and how they were trying. I think both of these talents could have been something in these gimmicks because they were highly entertaining even back then. Then we go to the main event of the evening, which is Tyson Kidd versus Michael McGillicuddy. Michael McGillicuddy, you may know as Curtis Axel, who had some success. He had an Intercontinental run. He was a tag champion a few times. Tyson Kidd was a tag champion as well. Tyson's career kind of got cut short by injury. I think he'd still be on the show as a high mid-card talent. McGillicuddy was a guy that had everything that you could want. He was athletic. He had a great look to him. He cut a decent promo. There was just something missing from his package that stopped him from being a good wrestler to being in the upper echelon of being a great wrestler. Because if you look back at it, Curtis Axel, McGillicuddy, whatever you want to call him, he has fantastic matches. There's just something that's not missing, a spark there that isn't missing. And I don't know what that ever was. He had some charisma. He was funny when he needed to be. He could be serious when he needed to be. There was just that it factor that makes a difference between somebody being Mr. Perfect and somebody being Curtis Axel. And I don't know what that it factor is, but his father had it. He did not. And not a knock on Michael McGillicuddy, whatever he prefers to go by. Tyson Kidd was absolutely amazing. Unfortunately, he did suffer a neck injury that ended his career. Tyson Kidd does pick up the win here. I'm going to give this one a 5 between the Bray video, between Johnny Curtis, Derek Bateman, Tyson Kidd, and Michael McGillicuddy having an awesome match. And I forgot about the dungeon lock. Tyson Kidd was using a modified kind of triangle choke / sharpshooter combined, also that would kick in your face. Kind of would seem like something that Daniel Bryan would have created. Definitely go check it out if you don't remember that move, because I forgot he had done that move. I forgot that was his finisher at one point. But this is a really good match. Tyson Kidd picked up the win. I'm giving that a 5. Like I said, I enjoyed the segments. I enjoyed seeing Tyson Kidd again, wrestling again. It's kind of a shame, and I hate to say it now, but if you can imagine Tyson Kidd in today's landscape, how the success he would have, and let's say he went to AEW, he'd be a top star there. Or the success he would have had under a more fleshed out version of NXT, where you started having guys like Adam Cole and people of that nature being there, and how he would wrestle against Ciampa and Gargano. Just kind of a shame that we didn't get to see his whole career. All in all, I'm going to give the show a 4. I thought it was highly entertaining. Again, looking back at it, judging it as a developmental, massive hits with Rollins, Bray Wyatt, Cesaro I would consider a massive hit, CJ Parker a massive hit. So coming out of that, you had 4 stars. Derek Bateman becoming EC3, another world champion. I wouldn't say Bateman, EC3's character, was as big as a hit as the other guys, but still, probably that second tier of guys that they still hit on and were able to use as talent for the next decade, which I would include Bo Dallas in, Jason Jordan, Fandango in that grouping, Tyson Kidd, Curtis Axel. I consider them in that next level where they weren't quite big stars, but they were big enough stars to help out on their roster, and they were entertaining enough to fill out roster spots. Some of the big misses on the show, the Ascension, I would have to say, is a big miss. They had a lot of potential, just not a whole lot of backing on the main roster. Riley Pierce, I would consider a miss, even though I enjoy the stuff he's doing now. He's not really a star. Jason Jordan and Tyson Kidd, I put them in an incomplete role. I'm not going to consider them misses because who knows what they would have done if they didn't get injured. As far as WWE-wise, Tom Latimer, CJ Parker, EC3, three guys on the WWE side. As far as if just WWE, I would consider them misses, but they've been three guys that have had success elsewhere. Overall, a very good first show for what would become of NXT. I rather enjoyed it. Let me know what you think. If you watch this or if you go back and watch this, let me know in the comments. Make sure you hit that share button, smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't. And if you made it all the way to the end, let's put Tyson Kidd in the comments because he deserves some recognition for just how awesome he was. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and this has been another episode of It Came From the Network.